All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I appreciate everybody being here this morning. And Cliff, if you go ahead and open us up in prayer, I'd appreciate it.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, we thank you today for the privilege to serve you in this capacity. We ask that everything we say and do, Lord, it'll be with your wisdom and with your conditions. We ask this in your Son, in Jesus' name, and for his sake, amen.
Amen. Cliff, do the roll call. Let's make sure we know who's on Zoom meeting with us.
Representative Treadway.
Here.
Representative Rigsby. Jess Skaggs for Senator Gudger.
Here.
Senator Bobby Singleton.
Here.
Senator Bell. Representative Tillman. Commissioner Boswell.
Here.
Lauren Hodge for Director Brassfield. Here. Director Cochran. Director Russell. Here. Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Cliff. All right, before we get started, kind of let everybody know where we're at. And so the last time we've met, we've talked about a number of issues, but the main issue was to get the Alabama Department of Mental Health to look at this issue for us and hopefully come up with some answers for us. And they will be making a presentation here today. Before we get started, is there any members of the committee have any questions? If not, we'll jump right into it. And who is our first speaker?
All right. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to start today, and I'm actually going to talk a lot about the brain. So if I had to categorize what today's discussion is going to be, it's really a lot of conversation about the brain and how trauma impacts the brain. And then after me, April Turner from the Department of Rehabilitation Services is going to talk about the brain in a little bit different way than I'm going to talk about today. So thank you for the invitation to be here. Very excited to be here. Happy to be presenting to this group. So am I clicking, Melissa? Okay. No, I'm good. You know, I'm an expert clicker now. So just a little bit of context as we began this presentation. So approximately 8 million Americans experience post-traumatic stress disorder each year. Veterans are more than twice as likely to develop PTSD. And then lifelong prevalence of PTSD among women is more than twice that among men. That is mainly due to higher rates of exposure to sexual assault or child sexual abuse. So what is PTSD? And I may be covering some of what y'all have covered before, but just wanted to make sure we were all kind of on the same page and the same level of understanding about PTSD. A traumatic event has occurred or it's experienced or witnessed of an actual or threatened death, serious injury, or threat to personal safety, felt intense fear or helplessness, a reaction to fear, not a reaction to being angry or aggressive. So here are some of the things that folks will be at risk of if they experience PTSD. Depression, anxiety, alcohol use, suicide, insomnia, sleep apnea, heart disease, divorce, and domestic violence. So for those of you who work with first responders, you know that these can be some of the risks that you see with folks along the way. The good news is with PTSD, if we can address it at the time it occurs, you really can avoid all of these things on this list. That's one of the things that makes PTSD different from what I traditionally think of as a mental health issue. There really are some ways, if you intervene and you stay ahead of the trauma, then folks don't have to experience some of the mental health consequences that come along with it not being treated. So risk factors and resiliency factors. One of the big risk factors is if someone is injured in the event. risk factor also is others hurt or killed. So again, for first responders, this sometimes is part of their daily living. A feeling of horror, helplessness, or extreme fear, having no social support, presence of extra stress. So if you've got first responders who are coming into the job and they already have some stress in their life, or there are other stressors, then this is going to be more significant. And then, of course, a history of mental illness is a great risk factor as well. Having a good support network, which in a way, first responders are uniquely able to develop that support network. We were talking earlier about firefighters and just the way that they work as a team. And in a joint setting where they're having meals together, they're doing a lot of things together. There's some unique things about first responders where you really can create that support network in a different way than you can in other situations. Seeking out support from family and friends, finding a support group, and I'll talk again about the importance of peer support and how critical that is in this process. Having a good coping strategy, feeling good about one's own actions in face of danger, and being able to act and respond effectively despite feeling fear. So here's what PTSD is not. PTSD is not a personal failure or a weakness. So there is some stigma associated anytime you begin to talk to folks about anything that sounds like a mental health issue. And so we do spend a lot of time talking about that it's not a personal failure or a weakness. It's a natural psychological response to traumatic events. And so really getting that message out is one of the things that I think this committee could do that is really, really important to getting folks to understand that this is not a personal failure, this is not a weakness. Often the symptoms are flashbacks, nightmares, intense emotional or physical reactions, but the development of it varies depending on the individual and often their prior experience of trauma. Developing PTSD is not a sign of weakness, rather seeking and receiving help for PTSD is a sign of strength. There's a book out there for those of you who really want to take a deep dive into this subject. A lot of what I'm presenting to you today comes from that book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a phenomenal resource that really, if you're on this committee, I would hope that everybody would read. I meant to bring my copy today to show you, but I forgot. I rushed out of the office. Okay, so trauma is not just an event that took place sometime in the past. It leaves an imprint on the mind, body, and brain. So really, that's what we're trying to deal with, is the imprint that trauma has left on the mind, brain, and body. This imprint has ongoing consequences for how, as a human organism, we manage to survive in the present. Trauma results in a fundamental reorganization of the way the mind and brain manage perceptions. So really, we're talking about the circuitry of the mind, right? And it does change that circuitry by changing your perception of what is happening in any given moment. And we often think of that when people are triggered in a situation and perceive the situation to be much more dangerous than it is because of their prior trauma. It changes not only how we think and what we think about, but it also changes our very capacity to think. So it does interfere. If someone is in a constant state of fight or flight, they're not thinking about anything else. They're not able to process what's going on in that situation. So that's sort of the brain science behind trauma. So it does involve certain parts of the brain, really the stress and fear circuits, and it affects key regions like the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. What does that mean? These changes manifest in a dysregulated stress response, including heightened fear responses and generalized threat perception, along with altered processing of fear and memory. So those are the things that happen to your brain when you experience this kind of trauma. which makes it more difficult to process information and to retain all of that in your memory. Here's the good news. PTSD is something that people can recover from completely. And as the mental health commissioner, and when I talk about a lot of other things that we see with serious mental illness, someone more than likely is going to be on medication for the rest of their life for some of our serious mental health issues. In the case of PTSD, if there is appropriate intervention, the process of recovery can be very, very successful. A lot of it does depend on the willingness of the person to get help and to do the work that they need to do to recover. For some, that is simply some of the support groups. For others, it does involve intensive therapy, such as inpatient treatment in a residential facility. But at the end of the day, if the trauma is dealt with, and it's dealt with in a pretty timely manner, people can achieve a full recovery from PTSD. And that makes it a little different than most of the mental health issues I talk about, and definitely different from traumatic brain injury that April's going to talk about. So today we want to talk about the Connect app. This is what we talked about with Representative Treadaway. The Connect app is a free mobile application that does have mental health, substance use, and prevention resources available. First responders, public safety officers can access the most up-to-date information about what resources are available in the community. And it does have a services locator tool. And I'm going to do a little demo. We're going to hope that this works. You will have to look at the screen because it doesn't have audio. It just kind of takes you through the app. So this app does allow folks to find the existing resources that are available in their community. Our goal would be for all first responders to download this app. It actually can probably be a fairly useful tool in their day-to-day work as well. I'm sure folks are running into individuals who need mental health treatment or substance use treatment. So we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about how we see that rolling out to first responders. There are also great first responder resources on the Vital Alabama website. We do a lot of work with Vital, and they've received quite a few grants related to first responder training. And our game plan is the app is up for a refresh over the next few weeks. And so our game plan is to add some of this information that is available on the Vital website to the app so that first responders can actually access that through the app. That refresh, I think they told us, is going to take somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. So probably at our next meeting, we may want to talk about what resources do we really want to make sure, in addition to what mental health already provides, what resources do we want to make available through that app, because we have the opportunity to add those to the app. It was just very timely that we learned they were getting ready to do a refresh. So one of the goals between now and our next meeting is to make sure we add all the resources that are related to first responders. So we do have a couple of flyers that you have in front of you on your table. We have 2 different ones. We have one that has faces, and we have one without. That is just the 988 line, the Connect app, and our crisis centers that are available across the state to individuals who are in a mental health crisis. We debated about whether or not to put the faces on there, or whether or not to leave it kind of the plain flyer, so that folks could use it any way they want to. So wanted some feedback from the committee about which one. Okay. Okay. So flyer option 1 has faces. Any questions about the resources that we have up there, or is there another resource that you feel like we should add to the flyer is the other question. So 988 is the 3-digit, easy-to-remember suicide hotline. Anyone who's in a behavioral crisis in our state can call that number and receive help 24/7. That is operated by the Department of Mental Health through crisis call centers in our state. We have, what is our in-state answer rate, Melissa? Our in-state answer rate is 90.6. The goal that we were trying to reach is 90%. Why is that important? If we don't answer the call in-state, it's going to a national number, and they're not going to get local resources. They're likely going to be told to call 911. And so if we answer it in-state, then they're going to be directed to the resources that they need. The Connect app QR code is on there, and then most of you know we have 6 crisis centers in our state that are open 24/7. Let's see, Huntsville, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, Dothan, and Mobile. So there is a crisis center open 24/7 around the state, 6 different crisis centers. If someone is in a behavioral health crisis and they need a place to go, they can go to one of the crisis centers.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Commission, and I understand these crisis centers, and most of them are being used by adults, but what are we doing by adolescents when we get those crises without children? Do we have beds, or do we have a specific line for them? How do we deal with that?
So we have opened a pediatric crisis center in Huntsville. So in the Huntsville location, there's the adult crisis center on one side and a pediatric crisis center on the other side. We also have mobile crisis teams in some of our communities that are focused on adolescents. The good news is for adolescents, there's a payer source. So the majority of kids have either Medicaid, CHIP, or some type of insurance. And so they are able to go to a community hospital bed like Children's Hospital. And over the last year, there's at least 3 hospitals that are in the process of opening more adolescent beds because we definitely need more. So there's a hospital in the Shoals area. East Alabama is getting ready to cut the ribbon on their new facility, which will add additional adolescent beds. So we are seeing hospitals interested in opening new adolescent beds over the last probably 2 years. Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question as you said by next meeting, we should have all this online, these resources. If additional resources could be added, I'm sure, down there, how would that look? How would that happen? Let's say, so there's a lot of resources in the Jefferson County area.
Right.
Get over to the rural areas, there's not. So how would we track that and make sure that any additional resources or new resources that come available are part of this?
Really, that's us working with Vital to add to, they are constantly adding to the list of resources that are available. Even our resources expand and have expanded pretty significantly over the last 3 years. And so we work, as we become aware of those resources, then we still have the opportunity to continuously add to the app additional resources. So, sure.
I know that we did some pilot crisis centers for some of the more rural areas through our budget. Are those centers still open and active?
So the rural crisis model that is probably the most active and at the moment doing an urgent care model is South Central. And then you funded mobile crisis teams because obviously transportation is a huge issue in the rural communities. And those programs are still up and running, and they've been running really for almost 5 years now, I guess.
Are they a part of this 988 number in terms of
Yes.
resources?
Yes, they are. So if you call 988 and you're in one of those rural communities, you can have a mobile crisis team deployed to where you are. Often they do co-response with law enforcement in Huntsville and in Mobile. The mobile crisis teams do co-response with law enforcement. So, sure. People or no people on the flyer? Do you think people will be hesitant to go up to the flyer and do the QR code if we've sort of identified individuals we're targeting? Do you think it would be more likely for them to connect to that resource with just the plain flyer? We did a debate among our staff and couldn't decide which one was better, so we thought we'd let you guys decide.
I like people because it makes it real. It puts
Yeah.
you where it should be. It makes it real for you.
I kind of like that myself.
All right.
Just personal opinion.
I don't know if you need to take a vote on that, Chairman, but
Well, if you'd like to, is that a motion?
sure.
So all those in favor of having people on the flyer as it's sent out, indicate by saying aye.
Hi.
No?
You got your
Ayes have
people, Melissa. Melissa wanted people. She thought the other one was boring. Okay, so here's the great news as well. The science around how our brain works and how our brain works on trauma is drastically exploding right now. We know so much more than we knew 10 years ago. So neuroscience is exploding, developmental psychopathology and interpersonal neurobiology is expanding tremendously. And all of that is going to lead to some new therapies, and I'll talk a little bit more about a couple of new therapies that we're doing or that programs are doing around the state. So it's really important for us to keep an eye on that and really be ahead of the game. There's some therapies that are in an FDA process right now, so they're only clinical trials, but there's a lot of really great science out there. I wanted to talk about our veterans pilot projects because these are projects that we're going to be adding to the app. And as we know, many of your first responders are also veterans. So did want to share the projects that were funded under the opioid settlement appropriation to serve veterans around the state. The first one is Alta Point, which is a veterans crisis care and treatment linkage. Centerstone is actually a large community mental health center out of Tennessee. And they have had a history of working with a wounded warrior. And so they are providing 3,000 free therapy sessions for veterans. It can be in person or telehealth. And one of the reasons this was selected by our evaluation committee is they do serve some of those counties where there are very few mental health providers. So they really did look at, they did their homework, they read our Veterans Mental Health Steering Committee plan and targeted areas of the state, particularly rural areas, where there are very few mental health providers. And so they're doing in-person or telehealth. You Will is a free telehealth therapy and crisis calls for veterans 18 to 34. Veterans 18 to 34 don't seek treatment, and they're not usually at the VFW or the American Legion. And so we have trouble getting to them, or even ADVA has trouble getting to them and getting a message out. And so they like their phones a lot. So a telehealth method is really good for them as well. And then the one that's a little creative and innovative is Sojourn Counseling out of Birmingham. They are doing free EMDR, CBT, and microcurrent neurofeedback services to veterans. So microcurrent neurofeedback is getting at that rebuilding the brain process and creating positive pathways. They are offering that in the Birmingham location, but they also have a van that travels to the VFW and other locations where veterans are to deliver any of those services. And then the shoulder is a residential substance use treatment program and recovery services for veterans down in the Mobile area. So we did want to mention those projects. We have not added those to the Connect app yet, but we will be adding those soon. All right. And I am going to turn it over to April Turner, who is the state brain injury coordinator for the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services, because one of the things that is really, really important is to make sure, as April will tell you, if someone has an injury to the brain, which is different than trauma, it's a different kind of injury, that is identified and that is treated before you start to do anything else. If you don't, you can wind up prescribing the wrong medication, you can prescribe the wrong therapy, and then that person is not going to be very successful. So April is going to talk about the nationally recognized traumatic brain injury program that we have in the state of Alabama. April? You're welcome.
I'm going to ask him to be a professional clicker today. I like to walk around too. So my name is April Turner. I work with the Alabama Department of Rehab Services, and we are the lead agency for brain injury here in our state. I brought David White as well with the University of Alabama, who helps me do all things TBI research in our state as well. I want to take a moment too to just acknowledge that the topic today I'm about to talk about can be difficult, especially for those who have personal experiences with TBI, mental health challenges, and suicide. So whether you work or your own experience or someone close to you, feel free if you need to step out, or there are resources on the slide as well if you need them. So today's overview, we're going to talk about the definition of TBI, we're going to talk about causation, the prevalence of TBI here in Alabama, the intersection and first responder data, and also the gold standard for TBI and the TBI system of care here in Alabama. So first, it's important to understand the definition of a TBI, and you'll hear me say TBI all the time, but brain injury, okay? So an acquired brain injury is a gained head injury after birth. It's divided into two categories, traumatic brain injury and non-traumatic. TBI, traumatic brain injury, is a chronic disease and the leading cause of death and disability in the United States, according to the CDC. It is classified into mild, moderate, and severe, with mild being called concussion, but now nationally we called it mild traumatic brain injury. In Alabama, my department is charged to serve those with TBI, okay? TBI is a blunt force trauma to the head that is caused by an external force, such as a fall, blast, or MVA. A non-traumatic brain injury includes those that have internal events to the brain, such as stroke, cancer, loss of oxygen, or an aneurysm. So let's look at the causes of TBI. There are many causes of brain injury, with treatments of symptoms being the only standard of care. No two brain injuries are alike. There is not a magic pill to cure it, and it's often invisible. Falls, motor vehicle accidents, and violence right now are the top causes of brain injury in the state of Alabama. I know that because I get the traumatic brain injury registry from all the hospitals. Also, child abuse and near drownings are the top two causes in our state for our pediatric population. Next, let's look at TBI prevalence. So as I mentioned, the registry. In the state of Alabama, for fiscal year 25, this is the highest I've ever had it since I've been here, and I've been with ADRS for 24 years. 9,188 Alabamians had a brain or spinal cord injury in 1 year. 3,611 were listed as a mild brain injury. 5,577 were moderate and severe. Right now in the state of Alabama, there's 102,000 Alabamians living with a brain injury. And as is estimated right now in the data we have found, 40 to 50,000 first responders are exposed to repetitive head trauma in Alabama every year. Currently, Jefferson, Montgomery, and Madison have the highest rates of TBI in our state. Next. So let's look at the intersection of brain injury and PTS and mental health. There are 5 components: comorbidities, substance use, suicide risk, PTSD and TBI, and then medication sensitivity, as the commissioner mentioned. So for the comorbidity, veterans with brain injury face a higher risk for PTSD, anxiety, depression, and substance use. After receiving a TBI, psychiatric and medical consequences increase, which could include PTS, suicide, cognitive deficits, chronic pain, and unemployment. 35% of combat veterans meet the criteria for PTSD. Also, those who had no history of mental illness or mental health issues before the brain injury had mental health problems after the brain injury. And this is a confounding study from substance use and suicide risk that really gets to the heart of really what I'm doing with veterans and have pushed me as well. This is a Dr. Brenner study from Colorado. We looked at deployed Army soldiers. This is a longitudinal study over many, many years. And those that came back who tested positive for a TBI were 32% increased to have an alcohol use disorder, along with a mood disorder, along with anxiety disorder, along with PTS. But what was profound was that they found 100% of those had a high risk of substance use altogether. 100%. Even more on top of that, what they found in this particular study was if you had an Army soldier that came back that had traumatic brain injury, that had that 100% increased risk in substance use, they were 65 times faster time to suicide. And that was very important to us. Next, we're looking at TBI and doubling the risk of PTSD and mild brain injury. TBIs are not often seen in first responders due to the invisible injury not showing up on any kind of scan, such as an X-ray or a CT. And symptoms can come on many, many years later. And looking at medication sensitivity, those with TBI have an increased likelihood in being prescribed opioids and an increased risk for having an opioid use disorder. And those with TBI also have increased sensitivity to medications as well, especially those for mental health, such as benzodiazepines. So as you can see, this sometimes here in Alabama we call it a hot mess. Sometimes it could be a hot mess, right? So we've got PTS symptoms going on, we've got anxiety going on, we have brain injury going on. Who do we go to? Where do we go to first? What do we address first? Okay, and there are those of us who understand, who can explain where to go first. So it's very important for us to look at this slide here. And this is a slide, and all the references are in the back of the PowerPoint if you'd like to go to that after we're done today. But I get asked so many times, April, is PTSD the same as TBI? Absolutely not, okay? PTSD is a mental health disorder, whereas TBI is blunt force trauma to the head. We're dealing with 2 separate things. Can they present the same? Absolutely they can, okay? So with this particular picture here, you see those that have PTS on the left side, those are they have more flashbacks, avoidance, hypervigilance, nightmares, and re-experience phenomenon. That is pretty current, okay, within that population. Those that have TBI that I serve typically have headaches. They have sensitivity to light or noise. Being in this room right now really would get to some of my folks. I'm just letting you know with the light sensitivity, okay? Nauseous, vomiting at times, having vision or hearing problems, and also dizziness. But we know some of especially our veterans, have some of those same things, right, because of PTSD. So when we're looking at the commonality, when you see someone who's irritable, who may have some cognitive deficits like slowness at times, processing speed, they may not be able to sleep, depression, fatigue, anxiety, that runs together. Both, they could have both in the same. So when someone asks me, is it the PTSD, is it TBI, I address this particular slide here and go, okay, let's break this down and let's look at what's together as well, okay? So now let's look at the data with TBI and PTSD and first responders. So we went after what we could find, okay, right now, and we encourage you at the end, we have all the sites listed. We already know that the prevalence of veterans are high in first responders. We already know that the prevalence of TBI is high in veterans. So with our firefighters in particular, 75% had more than one lifetime head injury. With our police, our law enforcement, 74% officials reported more than one head injury, with head injury being highly associated with elevated PTSD and depression. For our EMS and our paramedics, right now, nobody's really studying TBI in that population. So there was no prevalence known in that population, but PTSD was predicted in 11 to 21% just due to the trauma exposure alone. And fresh off the press. So November of 2025, this article just came out, and I thought it was important to share with you all. In post-deployed veterans, so veterans who have come back home and they may be serving as a first responder, they looked at social supports as the most important factor in the predictor of PTSD outcomes. So what those supports, return to service supports, peer supports, are heavily needed right now in the community. That is the #1 predictor in post-deployed veterans. So the same invisible wounds we tracked in our combat veterans are mirrored also in our first responders. They're often unrecognized, they're often unrecorded, and they're often untreated. So the national gold standard, the commissioner spoke about, it was an honor to speak at the National Academies of Science and Medicine. They wanted to know what we were doing here in Alabama. We do have a screener that is nationally known. Now 18 other states use it as well. But the gold standard right now nationally is treating those with TBI and, yes, PTSD alongside, to include TBI screening, accommodating them at home and work, using a holistic and person-centered approach, and forming wraparound supports. So with my recommendations for this committee, we need to connect right now existing TBI programs and first responder organizations to partner to address specialized TBI care and training. We also need to find look at additional TBI support and training specifically for first responders into our nationally recognized system here that we have in Alabama. Now let's look at that system. It's very convoluted. Right now we're expanding it as well, but there is a one number. Anyone in the state of Alabama who has a brain injury or suspect of having a brain injury, from concussion all the way to severe brain injury, can call this helpline Monday through Friday, and we will link them to resources. So this is the Alabama TBI navigation system and helpline. It supports the Alabama TBI system of care, providing brain injury screening, information, referral, resource facilitation, care coordination, and education and training, and much more. Now, thanks to the Veterans Mental Health Steering Committee and the ADMH Commissioner here, ADRS TBI program has now expanded free TBI services to Alabama veterans, Guard, and those in long-term TBI recovery. The Alabama TBI navigation system has proved highly successful, and again, we keep saying it's a national model, but we're very proud of that as well. So in closing, first responders, culture alike military, promotes loyalty, selflessness, and courage, which can help and harm their mental health and reaching for help when they need it themselves. So it is crucial that we address traumatic brain injury alongside PTSD. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any members of the commission have any questions? Let me say this real quick. Thank you very much. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Michael. Thank you for you and your team and what y'all have done. We started these meetings and really didn't know what direction to go in. There's some new members here. So just to remind everybody what this commission is tasked to do is to better identify and diagnose and treat PTSD as it relates to public safety officials, get feedback from the various groups, which we have surveys, which I have a pile of from the Alabama Chiefs Association, Sheriff's Associations, Alabama Fire College, and the list goes on. report back to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate Pro Tem no later than the 3rd legislative day. So our window's closing. So just to kind of remind everybody what we're tasked to do, and to do it all under existing funding. So we didn't get any money. So you guys are not getting any money. So I appreciate that. So any recommendations from any members of the committee on the things that we've got to this point on, we'll open that up here in a minute. But my kind of time frame here is to probably have another follow-up meeting. And Mr. Condra, if you'll have a report ready for both of them that we can kind of review that takes all this in consideration, because there's a lot of wonderful services out there. I haven't even heard about this one. I'm sure it's going to be connected to this one-stop where we can get referrals to these folks, treatment of these folks, whether they're in rural Alabama or not. I would hope the League of Municipalities will make sure that this is a priority, that this hangs in every one of their municipalities, and that the various groups, whether the association, do the same. The Sheriff's Association, Police Association, Chiefs Association, especially all those in supervision level that have all these resources in this app. Because it really took a lot of the things that we got back from all these surveys, and it's going to put all of that into one place, and it's a moving kind of target. There'll be things added when these services drop off, they'll be dropped off. So it's really going to be what we were tasked to do to get this information out. I think at this point, I'm feeling more and more comfortable than when we started. So with that, those folks that are on Zoom meeting or here, let me know what you think, where we're at, what you think about this before we move on. The window for us to get this done is closing. So I'll open it up to anybody on Zoom first and for your input. All right, don't be shy. You give me some input, some idea that you're there and you're listening. All right, everybody's satisfied on Zoom.
Yeah.
So we'll open it up to the members here.
I think you got more.
I can't see from here.
RT.
Oh, Tillman.
Yes.
Tillman, you got some suggestions, input, where we're at? What do you think so far?
No, I echo what you're saying, Chairman. I think that everything we've been receiving tons of information, and I think that it's been going, great from my perspective on learning more about this. So I echo the sentiments that you're saying. I'm really learning a lot about this, and because I didn't know the big difference between traumatic brain injury and PTSD, things like that, which I think bodes well for us, so we can continue to do what we need to do to help and take care of our first responders. So I echo the same sentiments that you're saying. I think everything is going well.
And for those that don't know, Representative Tillman actually spearheaded this effort in the last legislative session. He was very concerned about bad legislation, and after a lot of talks, this commission was formed. And so we appreciate it, Representative Tillman, for you actually getting this started for us.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your shared efforts and everything that you're doing, because it's coming together. And that's because of you and your work and the stakeholders' work and all of the organizations that we're using. I really do appreciate that.
Anybody else?
I think there's a hand raised, another hand raised, maybe.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, very good. Thank you, guys. This is Representative Rigsby. Sorry I couldn't be there today. Just one thing I'll comment just to bring back to light. I appreciate the presentations today, both very, very good. We need to make sure that we keep in mind also, I think this was a big concern in our surveys about how reporting PTSD on the level of reporting to the supervisor or whatever, making it assured that these men and women serving in emergency medicine or emergency services are not going to be chastised for reporting these things. I think that was the biggest hurdle I remember hearing in our surveys. So whatever it is we decide to do as far as reporting services or availabilities, keeping that in a framework in mind of whatever we can do to make it just an easy reporting so that the men and women can get help without feeling the pressure of, am I going to be able to keep working because I'm going to speak up? We don't want to do anything that's going to put somebody's job at risk per se, but if they need help, they need to get help because that brings its own risk on the flip side of that argument. But I just want to make sure we keep that in mind, because I think that's going to be very important. I'd hate for us to go through this and it not be utilized, because the way we do something just makes it not friendly for them to feel like they can report safely. But I think the work is great. I think the awareness is good. It's just hope we get to a point where the boots on the ground feel like they can really get the help they need, keep their job, move to get better, and address the problems that we're going through. Thank you.
Good point, Representative Rigsby.
Great
With
point.
that said, how would that look if somebody's reaching out to the Alabama Department of Mental Health or in
Yeah.
these services? How would that look as far as
And
confidentiality?
I would like to say this too, and I did not mention it in my PowerPoint, okay? Confidentiality is a huge concern, right? And I do know with working all these years with people with brain injury, if you go in and tell your employer, there's a stigma there. There's a huge stigma, okay? So all the services that we offer for traumatic brain injury in our state are confidential. I did not mention that we have coming up 5 TBI centers across the state, and these are primarily for veterans and Guard. There will be one in Huntsville, Birmingham, Opelika, Dothan, and Mobile, and we will have a TBI clinic at the University of Alabama. If they walk in the door to one of these centers or clinics, it is confidential. It does not go on their record. Right now, we are currently screening within the Alabama National Guard. Our TBI screener is implemented within the Guard. We want to make sure those Guard are fit and they can work. We don't want it interfering in any way. So we've done it confidentially, and they can walk in the door. Nobody has to know. There is not a PTSD registry at this point in time. If you walk into a hospital, they do not track that, but they do track traumatic brain injury. So that is why I have the prevalence of that. But there is not a PTSD registry at this point in time, but I do have the numbers for TBI.
To follow up on our Vice Chair, Representative Rigsby's concerns, I think it goes a little deeper. Let's say that somebody has reached out for help, and the help and resources are there, but their treatment is ongoing, where they may have to miss work or be off work. And I think, if I'm wrong, Representative Rigsby, let me know, but I think as we move forward, how does that work with the employer? And I don't know, I don't have the answer.
Well, it gets into the ADA and disclosing a disability to an employer.
You don't
okay?
have to.
No, and I work for Alabama Department of Rehab. Commissioner, is it okay if I speak about this?
But as a work-related,
Yeah.
as a work-related type
Yeah.
issue,
Mm-hmm.
and they've communicated this with their supervision,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a concern. But
So I think there's a lot that people can and will do voluntarily. But I think when you begin to talk about missing work, once it gets to that level, the other thing that, I would just love to see us do is some training with supervisors and others so that they understand what trauma is and why people are accessing help. But there's a point at which the employer is going to ask questions if someone's missing a lot of work. So that's a workplace issue that, as the organizations probably need to spend some time talking about how to handle that in that situation. But from our perspective, one of the great values of getting the information out there is letting people go voluntarily. And a lot, probably, I don't know, April, what percentage of people, it's a pretty high percentage, I would guess, that could do that voluntarily and not necessarily wind up being off work for an extended period of time. There's obviously some really severe cases, but a ton of what we've talked about today through April's resources and my resources, people could seek help on their own. It would remain confidential. And only at the point that it became an absentee issue with the employer would then the employer have to figure out how they're going to handle that.
It's just like going to any other doctor appointment.
Any questions on where we're at, folks? Any input? You like where we're at? And I would think by next meeting, we will have the resources all inputted. We'll have, hopefully, if the League of Municipalities Association, the Chief Association of County Commissioners, and all the various groups, I would like to know how that would look with them getting this information out. Would that come from, would you work with the Alabama Department of Mental Health, work with these various agencies that deal with PTSD as it involves public safety folks and make sure that they do their job and that they put it out. Not saying you don't now, but we got to have somebody in charge. Okay, there you go. That's a full-time job.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, in January, we're standing up our new Alabama Veterans Center, Resource Center. And that can be another resource in terms of, because they'll be focusing on a lot of mental health and this trauma with veterans. And that can be, once they come online, could be another avenue of being able to get this word out also.
I mean, we work with these guys pretty closely, so I think we could certainly work with the league and county commissions to come up with a plan of how that's going to be disseminated. And Mr. Chairman, we've talked about too, working with the local government health insurance plan, because 55 of our 67 counties participate in that self-funded plan, and there are free mental health resources available to all plan participants. So we've talked about internally, you know, making sure that information gets in new employee hiring packets, in their annual review packets, so they know those resources are available through the local government health insurance plan. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and excuse me for speaking for the league, I'm not, but I think there's 238 municipalities that participate in the local government health insurance plan as well. So that's a vast majority of local government that we could use the resources through our self-funded insurance plan to get this information out as well.
All right, so how long, I'd like everybody on the commission to kind of absorb what we heard today, where we're headed, and maybe we'll have a meeting, and when can you have this ready first before I set another meeting? These guys are doing the report, right? Yeah, they'll have the report. But I'm talking about the app and all the resources and how it's going to look, and
We can have a layout of what it's going to look like, what the changes are going to be, but the app itself will not be ready until January, I think, probably first week in January.
about the
But
time.
what we can show you is what's going to be added to it during the report.
So Jeff, if you'll make sure that's up and running when we do the report, because the report has to be by the third day, so we're looking at about the 15th, 16th of January to make the report to the legislature. And hopefully by then, if that timeline works, we can say, hey, this is up and running now.
And then we can do the plan with these guys for dissemination of information.
Anybody else, any input, where we're at, where we're going? Go
I know
ahead.
I'm not a voting member, just here to help, but,
Go ahead and mention your name and who you work with.
Pete Grogan, I'm from LSA. So, one of the things that I would throw out there as a potential recommendation that this commission put in the report is that those professional organizations, chiefs of police, you know, the fire college, the fire chiefs association, all those associations have at their next annual meeting some type of training for leadership, so that whether it's mental health comes and gives the same presentation they just gave us, so that leadership starts getting educated on this and potential buy-in, so that hopefully would then filter down to the other supervisors, so that if someone does have a problem, they know that, okay, they know that this is, it's an okay thing, and it's got to be treated, and it's not a stigma.
Agree 100%. Anybody that's holding a supervisory position in any of these various groups should be aware of this and have some training, whether it's something that the Department of Mental Health can put on, it's online, they click on, you can verify that they've had it. League of Municipalities can make sure that their leadership teams and their various departments have had it, so everyone knows. It's a bigger task to push it to every individual. But ultimately, that's what the flyer and the communications and going online. But supervision has to have it. They have to have an awareness of what's out there to be able to direct folks to it. So agree 100%. So anybody else got anything? So to kind of recap, how long will it take before we have maybe our follow-up, our last meeting? December. Okay. I was supposed to be in Colorado this week, and I'm going to be in Colorado in December. Which week would you prefer? So make sure.
We're pretty flexible.
Okay. Oh, I'll set it. make sure I get the trip this time, because you sent me an email that said you could only meet on the 18th or 19th. Just want you to know my grandbabies are going to wait on me. I'll see them. But, no, this is very important, and I'll let y'all know. We'll meet again in December sometime, wrap it up. And Jeff, if your team will have a letter outlining what we're looking at, so we kind of look at that and see what needs to be added as we make this report to the Senate and the House. And if that's it, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Noes? Ayes have it. Thank you. Appreciate everybody for coming. Appreciate the presentation. My son is an instructor up there at Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
My brother's a police officer in Boulder.
Older?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I hope they pay him a lot. It costs a lot of money to live
Well,
up
that's
there.
why he moved up there, because he was in Auburn.
Was he?
So he moved up there.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I don't fly, so it's a long drive.
Okay.
Send this,
All right.
transcript to you.
Our letter to report. I've got to have a,